Hey everyone, David Nagel here. Welcome to the Successful Mind Podcast. I've got an idea for you. What do you think that you see? What do you believe that you see? Come on in and listen to this story. We'll see you in a bit.
You're listening to the Successful Mind Podcast.
Successful people learn how to make their minds work for them. I'm David Nagel, and this is the Successful Mind Podcast. Hey everybody, David Nagel here, the Successful Mind Podcast, and I've got a question, might be one of the most important questions you ever ask yourself in your life. And that is, what do you believe you see? So I'm going to tell you a story today, and I'm going to give you some information, and then I'm going to give you something to look at if you're interested in just kind of seeing how your mind works around something. It's an investment in time, but not really in money, I don't think, but it is an investment in some time. But it will show you something about yourself. That I think is pretty interesting. So let me start off the story with this. About a month ago, I got called in for jury duty, and I've been called in a few times over the years, but I've never gotten on a jury. It's the same thing that anybody ever goes through. Well, this time I got picked for a jury, and it was an interesting case. So once I realized that I was going to get picked, I was like, okay, so my job is to do the very best I can as a citizen here, based on the laws and all that. And they start off by telling you, they give you instructions, and part of the instructions are that you are to assume that the person that the state prosecution is trying to prosecute is innocent. You're supposed to come from the place where you assume that this person is innocent, and it's the responsibility of the state to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that this person is guilty before you meet together with the jury and you actually vote guilty or innocent. So this went on for about a day and a half. We were listening to all the evidence. And it's interesting because the prosecutor comes in and they run you through all the evidence, and they take you through the witness testimonies and all of this. And then it's a long day, right? Because at least for me, it was. And the reason is because I'm trying to stay very conscious about all the information that I'm hearing, taking all of that into consideration, what the people are saying, what they say that they saw, what they say that they heard, every bit of evidence. I'm trying to hold that in my mind from a perspective, from a base point. And the base point is this person's innocent. Okay. So in this country, in the United States, the way it's supposed to go is you're innocent until you're proven guilty. Just because you were arrested doesn't mean that you're guilty. Just because you were taken into custody doesn't mean that you're guilty. Just because it was in a newspaper or on the internet doesn't mean that you're guilty. And so I'm trying to hold this in my mind. Like, okay, so this person is innocent. What evidence do they have that tells me beyond a reasonable doubt that this person is actually guilty of the crime that they were accused of? And so the second day, we're listening to the defense attorney present that side of the case with witnesses and all of that. And they get done, they rest, they do their closing arguments, they rest, and we go into the juror lounge. And then it's our job to have a debate on what it is that we actually think about the evidence and if this person is actually guilty. Well, everybody voted for me to be the foreman of the jury, so that was interesting. I actually was happy with it because I felt that I could bring some leadership skills to the situation, and I also have been trained to know how to think based on cause and effect for 25, 30 years now. So I'm thinking to myself that I'm I'm pretty confident that I can do a pretty good job with this. And we start to go around the room, and everybody's having conversation, like they're saying what they think, what they believe is the truth. And there's about 3 or 4 people in this room that it became extraordinarily obvious that they had made up their mind about the case before we ever got to the jurors' room, before we ever deliberated. One person, I think, made up their mind that this person that was on trial was convicted, and the other 3 made up their mind that, or the one person made up their mind that this person was innocent. The other 3 people made up their mind that this person was guilty. And as we were having a debate, we were having conversation about this, I said, what is it that you feel is irrefutable evidence that takes your mind beyond a shadow of a doubt that this person is guilty, for the people that were saying that he was guilty? And the reasons that they gave had nothing to do with the evidence. It had to do with what they thought about the evidence, and it had to do with circumstances that really had nothing to do with the evidence as to whether the person was actually guilty or innocent. And I pointed out, I said, that has nothing to do with what the evidence is. We're supposed to go by the evidence. You're assuming something that the evidence does not actually say, that the attorney didn't actually say. And they were indignant that this person was guilty. And everybody else in the room was leaning on the side of innocent. There were a few people that actually said they didn't know, and they didn't know that there would be any information that they could ever know as to whether this person was guilty. Now, I got to say, before you go into a jury, they interview you pretty extensively. And one of the things they ask you is, do you feel that you can come to a conclusion based on evidence and rule a judgment for this individual? And if you don't think that you can, you're supposed to say no. So there were people in there that really had a very difficult time with it, for whatever their personal reasons were. They didn't get into it, but they did basically say that they didn't know that they could. Now, the other thing about this that was kind of horrifying to me was we were probably only in there in this conversation for about an hour, and then we were going to break for lunch. And the people that were on the part where they believed that this person was guilty, one of them actually came out and said, you know what? Let's just go ahead and vote. I'll vote innocent because nobody else believes that he's guilty, and this is a complete waste of my time. And I said to this person, I said, well, how come you didn't stand up and say that you were too busy to be able to do this, and you didn't feel that you could do a fair ruling for someone? And he just said, let's just get this over with. It's a total waste of my time. So I said, do I need to go get the judge and bring the judge in here or talk to the court about this? He said, nope, you don't have to. I'm going to vote innocent. And the way that it worked was that you had to have 100% innocent or you had to have 100% guilty. That you could not have any kind of a split in it at all, which, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you got 12, 13 people and they're all hearing this evidence, and then they have to vote on this evidence. And if it's not 100% each way, you have to debate it again, and you have to debate it again, and you have to debate it again. Now, I don't know how long that would have went on, but I thought to myself, it's a couple of things about this were very fascinating to me and horrifying at the same time. And one is that anybody could find themselves in a situation like this person who was arrested did. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the person's guilty, but the outcome of this on a jury trial is that you're going to have a jury of your peers make a decision based on the evidence that's presented. And the key part of the evidence that was presented that I believe caused reasonable doubt, and most of the people in that room believe caused reasonable doubt, was that nobody actually saw the person do what he was being accused of doing. It was all circumstantial evidence. And circumstantial evidence wasn't even enough to make a person feel beyond a reasonable doubt that this person could be guilty. So anyway, he got a vote of innocence, and he got let go, which I felt really good about. And I was thinking to myself afterwards, I was thinking, how frequent does this happen where people believe something based on the picture that's painted in their mind without actually knowing all of the facts? And how many people do we put in prison because of this? And how many other things in life, other problems do we run into because a person believes something that is absolutely not true because there's just enough information for them to complete a picture in their mind that basically tells them they come to the assumption of one thing when it's actually false. So as I was thinking about this, I was, for a couple of weeks now, I've been thinking, I really want to talk about this on the podcast, but I'd love to be able to give everybody something that they could actually go look at and kind of have this experience themselves. Well, last weekend, I came across something that I think you absolutely can do. And some of you may have already done this to some degree. So if you remember, and if you don't remember, that's fine. You can go look this up. In 2015, on Netflix, there was a series that came out called Making of a Murderer. And it was about a person that lived up in Wisconsin that was falsely accused of murder. And then he served, I don't know, like 15 years in prison or something like that. And when DNA evidence became available, they found out that the guy was not guilty after all. And he gets let go. And in letting go, he brings a lawsuit to the county that incarcerated him. And during the process of this lawsuit, he gets arrested again for murder. So they create this documentary. And I remember when this documentary came out, a friend of mine had seen it, and they called me on the phone, and they're like, "Have you seen this thing? This is the craziest thing we've ever seen." So I spent some time. And I went through it, and the way that this documentary was presented, I mean, I didn't know anybody that walked away from it that did not feel that this guy was completely innocent. And it was an outrage. It caught fire all across the country. Celebrities were commenting on it. It was on the news. People everywhere were getting in debates over whether or not this guy, I think it's Steven Avery was his name. Yeah, Brandon says, yeah. Was actually guilty or not. And everybody felt that pretty much everybody felt that he was innocent. So there was a lot of controversy around this. Anyway, they find the guy guilty. He goes to jail. His nephew goes back to jail. And everybody thinks the guy got completely railroaded. So a couple of weeks ago, it comes to my attention that Candace Owens of the Daily Wire makes a documentary called Convicting a Murderer. And it's about not just about this case, but it's also about the documentary that followed the case. And I really didn't pay much attention to it at first until somebody said to me, again, like people tell me things that they think I'd find interesting all the time. They're like, you need to check this out. So I check it out. And what she's doing is she makes this documentary about the fact that just because they created a documentary saying this guy was guilty doesn't mean that he's guilty, and it doesn't mean that he actually looks like he did the crime. And what she points out is all of this, tons of evidence that were completely left out of the movie, or out of the documentary, the original documentary, that nobody had any idea about. And when she brings all of this evidence to the table, your mind starts to switch over to like, oh my God, this guy's actually horribly guilty. But because the people that made this documentary left all of this evidence out, they convinced the nation, probably people all over the world watching Netflix, that this guy was actually innocent and he was being railroaded. Like people were marching over this. People were going to the courthouse over this. Like it was a complete uproar for those of you that remember. Anyway, so here's an exercise for you. Right? I'm not going to tell you what to think on this at all, but I think it would be, if you've never seen Making of a Murderer and you really want to see an exercise on how your brain can be manipulated, go watch Making of a Murderer and be really honest about how you feel coming out of it, okay? And then watch Candace Owens, her documentary called Convicting a Murderer, and see if that actually changes your mind. Now, I'm talking about making your mind up to based on how you feel, like how you feel inside of your body. Because when I saw the first documentary, I felt like It was coursing through my body that this guy was innocent and that he really got railroaded by our legal system. And then when I saw Candace Owens, when I saw her documentary, that all changed. And here's how it changed. And this is something that's very important for us to know. Whether it's the news or a documentary or a movie or an interview or whatever it is, it's very important to understand that there are extraordinarily talented people out there that can show one side of something because they're controlling the narrative, they're controlling the camera, they're controlling what the facts are, and they can make anybody look guilty or innocent based on how they're actually controlling that information. So if you know that, there's a great idea, which is to basically come from everything that you hear on the news is bullshit until you find out the facts are different. Otherwise, what ends up happening is that you will go down rabbit holes constantly because they will convince you of all this stuff that isn't true, but they get you to believe that it's true. And I think that they do a disservice all around the world with this. It should be illegal to misrepresent things that are actually factual. It's one thing if it's an honest mistake, but when you find out that it was completely misrepresented, that shouldn't even be okay to do to the citizens of the world. Go watch this. Take some time and do it, even if this isn't your thing. And the reason that I suggest it is because I think, well, in my journey of my career and working with individuals, the one thing that I know is that once a person has basically made their mind up about something in their life, it's very difficult to change their mind. And we've got a lot of people out there that are driving their life in a direction that they're not happy with. But because their mind is so made up about the facts and the ideas and the emotions and the stories that they believe in, they stay on that road because they don't see any evidence to change or how to change or that they should change or that possibly things are different than they actually see it. And it's getting worse. I mean, it's getting year by year, it's getting worse. Like the craziness that's going on in the United States and around the world is super crazy, probably more crazy than it's ever actually been. And it's become that way because of how the media controls the minds and the emotions of the public. So go watch Making of a Murderer, then go watch Candace Owens Convicting a Murderer, and then you see where you rest. See where your mind is. And just be honest with yourself about the experience. Because I think it's an experience that when you have it, you'll go, holy cow. This is, to go from believing something to non-believing something. And maybe you won't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you'll look at it and you'll go, nope, I thought he was guilty. And then after you'll see Candace's, you'll think he's innocent. I don't know. But give yourself the experience of seeing two different documentaries that claim that they're producing factual information, where one is actually omitting a ton of information, and then somebody comes in and brings in the rest of that information and see what it does to your mind. Anyway, it'll be a great journey. Have fun with it. See where your mind is afterwards. And let us know what you think. I would absolutely be fascinated to know what you all think. So leave us comments if you can. This is David Nagel. Have an amazing day.
All right.
Hey everyone, David Nagel here. Thank you very much for listening to the Successful Mind podcast. I hope that this has been informative for you and that it actually helps you think in different ways that benefit your life. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the Successful Mind podcast. If you like what you heard and you want to learn more, go to lifeisnowinc.com. I'll see you next week.